Jessy the Heron waits for his fish. One particular Sunday, Jessy was standing on his long legs staring into the murky water, right next to the bridge beside the quacking ducks in the park. Fishing is done standing up. That's what his father had taught him in the fields and streams, and that was what Jessy did. Just stand on your long legs and wait until a delicious snack with a tail comes swimming past, his father had said. A fish, or perhaps even a frog. As soon as you see it, step slowly and carefully towards the fish without moving the water, and then snap with your long beak. It's sad for the fish, but a heron must eat. So on this Sunday morning, Jessy was fishing in the park just by the noisy ducks and geese, who were busy trying to eat the bread thrown by the walking visitors. Above the stream there were gulls circling and squawking. Jessy loved to watch the gulls in the air. He was quite jealous of their art of flying, but he didn't like their bread. He never even looked up when people threw bread for the birds. Of course the ducks and geese did. They flapped over, quacking like mad. But a heron waits only for his fish, and that was why Jessy was staring into the dark water. He wasn't going to be disturbed by anything or anyone on this sunny winter afternoon. As the geese gobbled up everything, swimming towards the bread with their fat stomachs, they gossiped about that peculiar heron. How stupid he is, just standing and waiting. He thinks the fish will swim to him as though he's in the country fields. But this here is the city. In the city, everything moves fast, even the fish. So you must snap them up quickly and move off. That heron doesn't understand anything. I bet he's new in town. Laughing, the geese nudged one another and went on gossiping and eating. What is the heron looking for here? It's far too busy here for fish. Perhaps he's looking for frogs. But the frogs all have been eaten by other local herons already. They are real city dwellers. They don't stand and just wait. They dive from the tree into the water and snap. The fish are gone. Yes, all the geese had something to say about the heron as the water spattered off their fat bellies. But Jessy took no notice and remained where he was, standing a few feet from the bridge, staring into the murky waters, waiting for his fish. In the distance, a mobility scooter appeared. It was Mr. Noiseman. He rode in the scooter because his legs no longer worked properly. It was an electric scooter. It didn't smell of petrol, and it could go really fast. In the neighborhood where he lived, people called him the Wild Man on Wheels. Indeed, even though he couldn't walk anymore, Mr. Noiseman was young and still quite wild and free. On this Sunday, Noiseman fancied racing fast through the park. In fact, he was really too late for that. By now, the park would be quite full of walking people. Never mind. He would drive carefully and he could steer very well. Mr. Noiseman liked to have some fun, which was one of the reasons he'd bought his scooter. It cost quite a lot of money, but it could drive really fast. It had one small wheel at the front and two larger ones at the back. It looked good, too. He could sit comfortably in the seat and feel the motor throbbing while he was driving. He loved it. There were lots of bridges and bends in the park. Mr. Noiseman really enjoyed driving fast over the bridges and around the bends, especially on a Sunday when there were lots of local people to watch him. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He just wanted to show off a bit. Otherwise, the Sundays were just so lazy and boring. He knew exactly what to do to make sure everyone watched him. If he accelerated just before the bend and then raced around on one back wheel whilst his other wheel balanced in the air, then they would certainly all watch. He'd often done it before, and the gravel made a loud noise, and people could hear him coming and move out of the way. It gave him such a powerful feeling, hanging on one side for a couple of seconds and then bouncing back onto the ground again. Oh, he loved that, and all the more when people watched him and cheered. Hooting his hooter, Mr. Noiseman rode into the park. He went straight onto the big bridge. The bend after the bridge was really sharp, and the path ran on beside the water. Oh, that place was so exciting. First, though, he had to make a lot of noise with his hooter to warn people to get out of the way. After hooting his horn, Mr. Noiseman went over the bridge at full speed. The wheels of his scooter made a great sound on the wooden boards. It sounded almost like a train. Then he raced fast down the bridge on the other side and as fast as possible through the bend. He knew he had to steer carefully, because then he could race along beside the stream to frighten the geese. Sometimes they would hiss angrily at him, and Mr. Noiseman thought that made it even more fun. Just around the bend behind the bridge, Jessy the Heron was fishing. From the corner of his eye, he saw Noiseman racing towards him. What on earth was this? An idiot heading straight for the stream where he, Jessy, was fishing. Oh yes, Jessy was right. Mr. Noiseman had accelerated on the bridge, and the path was still a bit slippery from the frost. Mr. Noiseman never followed the weather forecast, so he had no idea it had been frosty that morning. As he drove down the bridge, his scooter started to slip and slide. Luckily, all the people had fled from the bridge as they saw everything going wrong. Mr. Noiseman couldn't keep the scooter in the bend. It started to spin out of control. He saw the treetops spinning round and no longer knew where he was. It was lucky the scooter didn't fall over. Instead, it drove off the path and into the grass towards the stream. Towards Jessy the Heron. Mr. Noiseman and his scooter landed in the water with a big splash, right in front of the astonished Jessy, who started to hiss at him. Luckily, the water had slowed down the scooter, or else he would have crashed really hard into Jessy. Two dark, beady eyes looked at him threateningly across the water. The heron was really angry, and my word, what an enormous beak he had. Right up close, Mr. Noiseman saw this size for the first time. Before he had time to be really scared, Mr. Noiseman noticed how his expensive mobility scooter was gradually sinking down deeper into the cold water. Air bubbles were coming up to the surface of the stream. All the ducks and geese had seen Mr. Noiseman coming and had immediately flown off with a great deal of indignant noise. That's the idiot in that hooting scooter. Oh, we know him all right. He always races around scaring people, but he never brings us any bread. Always teasing us. It serves him right. Ha ha, look at him now. But Jessy didn't fly off. He stayed exactly where he was. He was hungry, so he needed to fish. He walked threateningly towards Mr. Noiseman to scare him off. But Mr. Noiseman couldn't go anywhere. He was stuck in his seat in the cold water. He closed his eyes so he couldn't see what was happening. People along the edge of the water started to shout and call out. Mr. Noiseman could hear them all around him. He felt very ashamed, but there was nothing he could do now in his wet and sinking scooter. Slowly he felt the cold water rising in his clothes and up to his neck. Oh, it was so cold and so muddy. And all the time the heron's long beak and beady eyes were looking at him. What was the silly bird going to do? Oh no, not that. Noisily, Jessy flew out of the water and landed on Mr. Noiseman's head. He could feel the heron's claws gripping into his hat and hair.